It was stated that the inmates in Josh Duggar's room in his federal prison in Texas went on a hunger strike after their recreational time was taken away as a punishment for the inmates' involvement in the possession of contraband. As a kind of widespread punishment for illegal goods, the temporary warden has announced that leisure time will be discontinued indefinitely. According to a source who spoke with the United States Sun on Tuesday, March 11th, it has been closed for more than a week. The insider stated, "They have been shaking down all of the dorms and not letting people outside, which is not a good thing." The source asserted that 2 dormitories, including Josh's, participated in a hunger strike on Monday morning as a form of protest. Neither of the 2 dormitories, which together house a number of hundreds of convicts, went to chow. Until they get their rest back, they are not going to eat. The following statement was made by a spokesperson of the Federal Correctional Institution Seagoville to In Touch on March 12. There are no restrictions to inmate recreation, and there are currently no inmates refusing to eat. Once in the morning and once in the late afternoon, inmates at the Federal Correctional Institution Seagoville are given the opportunity to engage in outdoor leisure, as reported by the United States Sun. For the purpose of passing the time, inmates have access to a variety of activities, including a track and horseshoes, as well as tennis, basketball, and pickleball facilities. In June of 2022, Duggar, who was 37 years old at the time, started serving his 151-month jail term for child pornography allegations. As a result of allegations that Duggar was in possession of a mobile phone when he was serving his sentence in February 2023, his release date was originally scheduled for August 2032. However, it was therefore moved up by 2 months to October 2032. After he allegedly used the internet to download child sexual abuse material, the former star of 19 Kids and Counting was taken into custody in April 2021, according to a press release issued by the United States Attorney's Office for the Western District of Arkansas at the time. According to the allegations, Duggar was in possession of this material, at least some of which portrays the sexual assault of minors younger than 12 years old in the month of May 2019. During the trial that took place in November 2021, Duggar was found guilty by a federal jury on 1 count of possessing child pornography and 1 count of receiving child pornography. The verdict was handed down on December 9, 2021. On the 25th of May, 2022, during his sentencing hearing, the latter charge was completely dismissed. The former TLC star has been able to purchase products through the prison's commissary shopping list and has been provided with 3 meals each day while she has been incarcerated from the time she was released. In addition to the food that is served on a regular basis at the prison, he possesses a broad variety of meats, cheeses, beans, soup, snacks, and candy bars that can be purchased by himself or by other individuals. What was on the menu for the convicted sexual offender's Thanksgiving meal in November 2024 was revealed in an exclusive interview with In Touch. This was the suspect's 3rd Thanksgiving spent behind bars. For their entree, the detainees at FCI Seagoville were served roasted turkey and ham that had been caramelized. The vegetarians had the option of ordering a veggie lasagna, which included kidney beans, soybeans, and filthy rice as individual ingredients. In addition to that, Duggar served a variety of side dishes, such as cornbread dressing with turkey gravy, sweet potato casserole, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, and dinner rolls. For dessert, the inmates were provided with a variety of pies to choose from. The first thing Josh Duggar noticed about life in prison wasn't the guards or the constant surveillance. It was the silence. The type of silence that existed between the metal bars and behind the razor wire, where people said little, yet everything was understood. It was the kind of silence that wrapped around the atmosphere of the federal penitentiary like a dense fog, a constant presence that hung in the air as much as the stale smell of disinfectant and sweat. Duggar had been in prison for only a few months, but the day-to-day monotony of his new life had already begun to wear on him. Once a television star, known for his wholesome family image and prominent role on the reality show 19 Kids and Counting, Duggar was now confined to the stark walls of a medium-security facility in Arkansas. His fall from grace had been swift and devastating, and now the former reality TV star was just another name on a list of prisoners. He had expected the guilt, the shame, the whispers of those who knew his name and history, but what he hadn't prepared for was the crushing sense of nothingness that followed him through the prison halls every day. It wasn't just the lack of freedom, it was the lack of purpose. At least when he was on television, his life had been consumed with people, family, production teams, fans, but now he was nothing. Just another number, a faceless inmate. And then there was the recreational time. Prison, despite its grueling routines, still offered a glimmer of freedom in its gymnasium and outdoor yards. Inmates had time each day to play basketball, walk around the yard, or talk to each other in the open air. For Josh, a man accustomed to a controlled, predictable existence, that time on the yard was often the only part of the day that kept him from losing his mind completely. The rest of the time was spent in the dimly lit cell, reading old newspapers or sitting in the common area with other prisoners, whose stories made him feel like a stranger in his own skin. It was during this time, when the pain of idleness gnawed at his insides, that the word came down from the guards. Recreational time had been suspended indefinitely. A rash of incidents in the prison had led to stricter rules. Fights had broken out between rival gangs. The administration, always looking for a reason to tighten control, seized upon the excuse. With recreational time halted, the inmates were left to stew in their frustration. Josh watched as the other inmates began to react. The loudest of them were the ones who had been in and out of prison for most of their lives. They scoffed and cursed the new rule as if it were just another symptom of a system that already hated them. But there were others, quieter types, who seemed to wither under the weight of it all. The loss of exercise, the inability to stretch their legs, the basic human need for freedom, they were all slowly turning this place into a pressure cooker. That's when the idea of a hunger strike began to take root. It started with a whispered conversation between two inmates near the far corner of the common area. Josh overheard it, and his ears pricked up. Hunger strikes were not a new phenomenon in prisons, but this one would be different. This one would not only fight for the return of recreational time, it would make a statement. A statement that Josh Duggar would not allow himself to simply disappear in silence, like so many other inmates before him. "Maybe we should just stop eating," one of the men said. "Stop eating?" his cellmate responded. "You're out of your mind. They'll just throw us in solitary." "They can throw us in solitary all they want," the first man shot back. "But they can't take away our voices. They can't make us disappear." Josh wasn't sure if he believed the man, but something about the passion in his voice struck a chord. For the first time since his arrival, Duggar felt a stirring within him, a strange mixture of purpose and rebellion. He was not a leader. He never had been, not in the way that others led. But Josh had always been someone who, in moments of quiet desperation, sought control. And now, in this prison, the only thing he had left to control was his own body. He decided to approach the man later that night. His name was Marcus, a tall, broad-shouldered inmate who had been incarcerated for a series of violent offenses. Marcus had a reputation for being tough, but also for having a certain charisma. He was the kind of person people listened to in prison. When Josh found him, he was sitting alone in the corner of the common room, idly flicking through a dog-eared magazine. "You really think it will work?" Josh asked, sliding onto the bench across from him. Marcus looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Do you really care, Duggar?" Josh hesitated. He wasn't sure he knew the answer. But something about the simplicity of Marcus's question brought him clarity. He was tired of being just a prisoner, just a name on a list. For the first time, the idea of resistance felt like something that could reinstate his dignity, even in this place. "I care," he said quietly. "I don't know if it will work, but it's something to do." Marcus grinned. "That's the spirit." The plan took shape quickly. Within the next 24 hours, word spread throughout their dormitory. The hunger strike was on. The inmates would stop eating until the administration reinstated recreational time. Some scoffed, calling it a fool's errand. Others, however, seemed energized by the collective action. It was a way of taking back something from a system that had stripped them of everything: freedom, privacy, and now even the right to move their own bodies. On the first day of the strike, the atmosphere in the dormitory shifted. The usual noise of clanging trays and conversations was replaced with a tense, quiet resolve. Josh noticed the shift in the other men's faces. There was a fire in their eyes now, something that had been missing before. Even those who had seemed resigned to their fate found themselves caught up in the movement. By day 3, the guards began to notice. The first round of threats came through the loudspeakers. "Eat your meals or face consequences," came the cold, mechanical voice. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was a question of power. Josh could feel the pressure mounting. He knew that this was only the beginning, that the hunger strike would force the administration's hand one way or another. The problem was, the consequences could be severe. Inmates who participated in hunger strikes were often punished with solitary confinement or worse, depending on how the situation unfolded. By day 5, the pain started to set in. For Josh, the physical hunger wasn't as painful as the emotional toll. He couldn't help but feel his body begin to slow down, his thoughts muddling as the hunger gnawed at him. But he held strong. He reminded himself why he was here, to fight for something beyond just survival. He couldn't explain it fully, but the act of resistance felt empowering. Then came the confrontation. It was early in the morning, and the strike had reached a boiling point. The head warden, a grim man named Sergeant Harper, entered the dormitory with 2 guards. He paced back and forth, eyeing the inmates one by one. "This is your last chance," Sergeant Harper said, his voice low and threatening. "Stop this nonsense before it goes too far." A murmur rippled through the room. Marcus stood up slowly, his imposing frame casting a shadow over the other prisoners. "We're not stopping," Marcus said, his voice steady. "Not until you give us back our right to exercise." Harper's eyes flicked to Josh, who remained silent but resolute. The warden knew the stakes now. If Josh Duggar, the infamous former television star, was involved, the media would eventually pick up on it. The hunger strike had become more than just a fight for exercise. It was a symbol, a public spectacle, and Harper knew how dangerous that could be. The negotiations began almost immediately after that. The prison's administration, realizing the unrest could grow, promised a partial reinstatement of recreational time, but only under strict conditions. The inmates could use the yard, but under supervision and only for limited hours. The deal wasn't perfect, but it was a win. The hunger strike ended, and the prisoners were allowed their daily recreation once again. Josh Duggar, though physically weakened by the ordeal, found something more valuable than just physical relief. He had found his voice again. In the end, Josh realized that his time in prison wasn't just about paying for his past mistakes. It was also about finding new ways to assert his humanity, no matter how small the victories seemed. The hunger strike had been a simple act, but it had reminded him of one crucial truth. Even in a place like this, where everything was taken away, there was still power in saying no. And for the first time since he had arrived, Josh Duggar felt, if only for a moment, like he had regained control.